Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be listening to us from on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. And I hope you'll enjoy our show this special day because I'd like to go into some topics that you're not going to usually get if you watch mainstream media. And there's a reason for it. You're not going to get this kind of information if you just, sailed through school, even university, and just kind of accepted things for what they are. Because sometimes you have to ask yourself, what if it's not that way? And that's what we want to do tonight. Anyway, before I begin, I got to do that plug here. So if you're listening to this later on YouTube, then please subscribe to this channel. You just click that little button that's down there. It says subscribe. And also check the comments section because that's where you'll find a link to my official website. And also, hey, if you want something that's kind of dark and dystopian, set during the era of Noah, check out my new book, The Destiny of Our Past. You can find that on Amazon. So anyway, the topic I want to deal with now is the prison we are in and how to break out of that prison. And what I mean by this prison is more of why we are kind of walled in. Not to borrow so much from Star Wars. I think it's this quote from Star Wars, something about our perception as our reality. But now, if our perception is our reality, the person that's doing the perception management, look that term up. The person that's doing our perception management ultimately controls our reality and therefore is very similar to a jailer. Now, I will say this. In much of Western society, while I find the limitations, the assumptions to be quite oppressive in many ways, it's sort of like the analogy of living in a velvet-lined cage, a very comfortable cage. You can lay down, it's soft, you have the bars, they're soft and warm, but ultimately it's still a cage. It still controls us. Now let's take a look at how some of those controls are, and I will go into how we can break free of these. Okay? So, first of all, I would actually have to ask, are we a healthier or happier society than we used to be? Okay, first we have to establish that the velvet-lined cage is not something we just want to stay in because, hey, it's pretty nice in here. If you're well fed and you got your little cage going on, maybe it's like, well, why unlock it? Why leave? Well, first I'd have to ask, are we healthier, happier, and more content than we used to be as a people? Now, I would contend that we're not. And if you actually look at our history, how hard people had to work, 50 years ago, getting up in the morning 5 days a week and going down to the steel plant or the rock quarry or the railway or the car manufacturing center, even the office, it wasn't that easy a life to live. But yet, it seemed that people were less depressed. It seemed that people had it going. It seemed that people were more content. And, if you look at society today, are people that way? Are they really content and happy and secure and all of those kinds of things? Do they have that feeling that this is so fantastic? I would actually say that they don't. Now, this is talking about the whole. The society in general. Now, there are subgroups that might actually be happy. It just seems ironic that the more integrated you are within the dominant society, the less happy you really are. As a wife, as a husband, as a parent, and as a child, as a student, as a worker, as whatever. And it just seems that the more you conform, the more you just go along with the game, the less happy you are. There's an irony to that, isn't there? I think that's a really big irony. Now, we go on next. Let's take a look at the family. Okay? Healthy societies are, made by healthy families. Teddy Roosevelt said something about the foundation of any great civilization is going back to the homes and the families of which the children are being raised. And that's actually true. It's like looking at human beings, I'll use another analogy, as like cells. Our body is made up of trillions of cells. They all work together and produce, what you're sitting here or driving down the road or whatever. You are thousands of millions of cells working together. Now, if just some of those are unhealthy, it can spell doom for the entire system. And if all of your cells are unhealthy, you'll die. So will civilizations as well. Now, we have a lot of contradictions in today's society. If you don't make a lot of money, you're considered a loser. But if you don't have a family, you're a loser as well. I mean, if you have, I have to say this before I go on here. I was reading an article recently about how it was centered on this. It was like the white working class population of the United States is on the decline. I mean, literally, the suicide rate, health, this kind of thing is really going down. And the thing is that one of the problems it listed was that people, when they don't find that they have a means to survive, they, at a certain level, they just don't get married. And if they are married, they don't start families. But ultimately, the problem there, the great irony, is the fact that these family ties and these responsibilities is what gives people a security. Okay? Your friends may like you and care for you, but ultimately your family is what counts. Those people will be with you to the end. Whereas your friends, that's transitory for the most part. Think about how many people you knew 20 years ago that you said, oh, these are my friends. Probably most of them are not anymore. All right? They might be on your Facebook, but that doesn't really count, does it? So ultimately, it is your spouse, your children, and your parents that really do count. But yet, in severe economic times, the people that are not getting married and having families are the people who are at the most vulnerable level. And I'm not talking about the very poor. The very poor have adapted to this situation. But the people who were raised where you get married, you support yourself, you pay your own bills, and so forth, they're not adapting so well to the new realities of globalization and technological advancement and automation of the workplace. So therefore, they are being hurt the most. So ironically, this is a time when they should be getting married. I've seen young couples, when they get together, they struggle and struggle and struggle. But maybe one person's out of job, but then the other one has a job, and then goes vice versa. But they're able to still get married and start having kids. Not waiting until they're like 39 years old, where it's biologically impossible. At least, for the most part for women. And but we have these contradictions. If you're this is something I've heard many, many women say. If you have a career, you feel like you're unfulfilled in the sense that you want to be home and having children. If you're at home having children, you're looking at that blasted television set that's showing you all the things you're missing right now. Okay? You're missing out on the glamour. You're missing out on this, would you say? A fantasy. See, television is nothing more than a fantasy. And it is probably, to be honest, I venture to say that your need for prescription antidepressants and all these other things would dramatically decrease if people just took a hammer and smashed their TV set. Now, I'm not suggesting that necessarily, because you don't have to be like the average American watching 5 hours of TV a night. But, when you really come down to it and you start looking at what you're wasting your time on, 1 hour show, it better be pretty important. Because otherwise, that 1 hour you could have been spending with your family. Or you could have been out there exercising, getting yourself in great shape. You could have been doing all these other things, and yet you were watching this TV show that most TV shows are made as nothing more than filler. Okay? They're not made with this great artistic expression in mind. They're made as filler to get you to watch them so that you'll buy the products and I'll get to this in a moment about TV, but you buy the products there that they advertise. Look at the time you're wasting in front of something that's only designed ultimately to make you unhappy. Yes, that's its function, to make you unhappy. Now, you can choose a few things here and there to watch, and that's, I used to watch TV a lot. I hardly ever watch it anymore. There are some shows I really like, and I'll watch those, but I'm very choosy. Okay, I'm not going to, feed my mind with junk food when I can watch something that really does have some value to it. And not come home and think, okay, well, what's on tonight? It used to be the case. It still is for many people. What's on tonight, dear? Is that existence? Is that really using that time efficiently? No, it's not. It's just making you sad. Because, think about this. You're sitting there and, the baby's crying or something like that. And, that's what nature is. That's what biology is. A baby's trying to communicate. But then you see these happy people that don't even exist. Do you know how much, it used to just be, you put lots of makeup on them and they just look so great on TV. Well, now they can use computer imagery and, you could take, Jabba the Hutt and make him look really fantastic. By the way, was Jabba a he or she? Never really got that. Anyway, the thing is that television is going to convey things to each person to make them unhappy. And also men too, and women, guys usually put a lot of value in how much money they make and that sort of thing. And so, some TV show on, like someone's trying to choose a dress for their daughter's wedding or something, and they list a price of $5,000 or $6,000, and you're thinking to yourself, my gosh, how could I afford such a thing? Well, is this really something that is making you feel good watching it? Why not they should have it, I guess they do, just watch some channel on, I'm rich and I like to show it off how poor you are, or something like that. I think it would get viewers. I seriously do. So, think about that for a moment. We live in a society of contradictions where everything is, for all ages, all sexes, there are things that are just coming at you, and that's not a healthy existence. I can't remember who said it. Conforming to the society's ideal is just insanity. Conforming to an insane society is just being insane yourself. Something to that effect. Then we get into this whole media. The media teaches us what we should strive to want, and to feel inferior, and to condition us to be an empty vessel that can be filled with goodies. Now, I'll give you an example here. One of the first functions of movies and later television was to fuel the fashion industry. And if everyone just wore clothes until they wore out, the fashion industry would be in pretty sad shape. Especially now with all of our synthetic clothes. I'm sure everyone remembers back to some teacher they had in high school that you looked at some old student album from 20 years back, and he was wearing that same shirt and tie that he, for that picture as he got for this year when he was retiring. The thing is, clothes don't wear out that fast. So you need to change to where you get people to feel bad about wearing what is now not trendy, and to feel good for buying what is trendy. And who decides what's trendy? The fashion industry. Who decides what's good looking? The fashion industry. Who decides how much it should cost? The fashion industry. And they go and use the medium of television and movies to make sure that they let you know what the cool people are wearing. Now, the thing is, it's nice to wear nice clothes. However, if we so obsess over labels on purses and clothing and all the accessories, perfumes and whatever, then we just are automatically saying that we buy this, we feel good, and then that goodness is obsolete just maybe a couple weeks later because now it's no longer in style. You got to buy something else. It doesn't work like computers, where maybe if you buy a computer, the year later it works better. You could have bought something that had more capabilities for the same price. With most of our stuff that we buy, it doesn't improve. In fact, it might even not be as good. I heard from someone, I don't know if this is true or not, but in countries that are really considered super fashion conscious, they actually design clothes or sell clothes in those countries that are of less quality than in countries that aren't so quick to do a turnover. And the reason for it is they figure in the country that's all trendy and fashionable that it's just something that you're going to wear a pair of pants, and it's not so much that you're worried that they're going to still look and feel the same now as they will a year from now, because you're going to figure you're going to throw them out in a year. So you don't make them as durable. You make them to where they're actually cheaper quality. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it would make sense, planned obsolescence in clothing. But, people feel like they're less of a person if they don't have what's in style. And that is something that has been created by this society. And the only way to counter it is to actually understand that. Okay, and I'll get into that in a moment in more detail. But still, the media does teach you to be an empty vessel. It wants that. It starts at a very young age. Okay? You want this toy to be cool. Then it turns into you want this dress because that's what everyone else has. Then it turns into you want this, and then you want this, and then you want this, and then you want this. And they have very advanced psychological experts and sociological experts, anthropological, that find out little tiny details about what things will sell to you based on your age, demographic, and perceived wants and insecurities. Remember, insecurities, very important, because if you don't get people to feel if you had a population in which you told people that they were fantastic the way they were. Now, I'm not talking about the whole idea that people who are obese, should just say, yay, I love me for who I am. In a way they should, but you could also say, well, that's not exactly healthy. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying that you should, no matter what your condition, you should see yourself as special and then decide what could change based on making you happier, not what someone else tells you should make you happy, and then buy in order to in some way compensate. We tell alcoholics that alcohol is only going to mask the symptoms. But then we have a media that sells us stuff to mask the symptoms of whatever perceived inferiority we may have. So therefore, you could liken our media to like a drug pusher, in a sense, because it's a happy machine. Do this and buy this, and you'll be happy. Conform to this, do as we say, and you'll fit into society, and you'll be so happy to do so. I'm sorry, but fitting into society, not a good thing. Anyway, let's take a look at news media. It's superficial. It relies on fear. It bombards us with imageries that contradict our natural willingness and desire to act, but yet we're not able to. And of course, its function is ultimately to redirect that libidinal, energy into buying more things. Don't believe me? Well, think about this. The more a person is fearful and anxious, the more susceptible they are to advertising. So the media, does most of our news media actually analyze a situation? Or they just throw it out there, and then they go on to the next one, and the next one. And it's like a 2-minute blip here, there. I mean, no one actually can then say, well, this is what I believe because you've just had a few seconds of, this is what's going on. It's a headline to get you to watch that news, which is nothing more than entertainment. The news media in America is nothing more than entertainment. Look how glitzy they are. Go back and watch on YouTube a news broadcast. You can find those. Look it up. A news broadcast from 1970. It's got a little intro music, maybe a cute little symbol at the beginning, and then it goes into whatever news show it is. And a lot of times they really analyzed what was going on. Now it's just it looks like it's the beginning of any kind of TV show. Glitzy and lots of bright lights, and then the pretty faces on there in fancy clothes reading off the teleprompter. And it's just little clip, 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 almost sound bites. And most of them are bad news. Most of them are get you to worry. Most of them are get you to be fearful. Watch out. It's coming. They're coming. I don't care who's coming this week. Is Trump coming to get you? Are the Russians coming to get you? Maybe it's the Saudi Arabians. Or maybe it's the Chinese. Or maybe it's, fill in the blank. Maybe it's a new disease. Oh my gosh, we never heard of this disease before, but now everyone's going to get it. And then 2 weeks later, you don't even hear about it again. Maybe it's this new mudslide threat. And you're like living in the desert, but still you're like, oh my gosh, mudslides. So this is what the media is aiming at. And you see these funny things on YouTube where they'll have some cute but corny slogan, and it's being read by 100 different news stations around the country, the same slogan. And, usually the YouTube video will say something like, you think your news is open and free and so forth. No, it's not. It's as prepackaged as, radio stations choosing the names of the disc jockeys. That the name doesn't even exist. Or you go in one state and you hear this name, and then you're driving along, you go to another state, and it's the same name. and it's not the same person, because you're trying to make everything to sell. And with radio, of course, you're trying to sell to a certain demographic. You have music that's aimed for this age, this this race, this whatever. And it's the same with the news. It's designed, some stations aim for really old people, and so they have, commercials for adult diapers or something like that. Others aim for younger, and you'll see advertisements in the middle that maybe shows more young families. But ultimately, they are still aiming at a demographic because they're selling you stuff. And they want you to feel uneasy. They want you to feel bad, because then you'll feel so much better when you buy the stuff that's being advertised. It's like a relief. Get this and you'll feel better. Oh, you heard about all these people that died during this terrorist attack. But if you buy this, it'll make you feel better, because you know what? There's nothing you can do about those people in the terrorist attack clear across the world, but you sure can go down to the store and buy this product. Okay? Then, when I meant about the contradicting our natural willingness to act, human beings want to help people. So if you see something going on in your community, and you think, let's say you had a news program about some old lady that couldn't, she had 3 trees fall down on her property during a storm, and she doesn't know what she's going to do because now she can't get out of her driveway or things like that. I guarantee that if that's on local news, that, at least in the United States, you're going to wind up with people going down there with chainsaws and sawing that stuff away and opening the place up for her. But if you show devastation taking place in the Bahamas, how can people go and help? There's no way to help. It's like a contradiction as you're sitting there watching this. Oh my gosh, someone's father was kidnapped and is being held by terrorists. Someone's dying of this horrendous disease. Someone's this. But it holds us and makes us feel depressed. Again, depression, uneasiness, fear, all goes into, getting you to buy stuff. And, look, you don't have to be, a devotee of Freud to realize that this is redirecting what we would want to do, but it's giving us a substitute. That's why Freud called it sublimation. Substitute, sublimation. Look it up sometime. It's very interesting. Now, how do you solve this? How do you deal with this thing going on in our society? Well, first of all, don't become cynical. I've noticed that when people become cynical, they can become depressed, they become depressive, and they're almost as bad as those newscasters, except, of course, newscasters tell you horrible things while they're smiling and showing you their cleavage. Okay? And but cynical people, they're just kind of like downers. Don't become cynical. There's a lot of great things out there in the world. There's a lot of great things probably within reaching distance of where you're at right now. But we have to recognize them. Now, but we do have to question everything. I seriously believe that. Question the norms that are going on around you. Why should I have to buy this? Why should I believe this is the way to lead my life? Look at your ancestors 100 years ago. Why is our set of standards, beliefs, and values better than theirs? Now, of course, we've had these horrible things implanted in us, like, well, what about maybe they were more racist in those days or something like that. Yeah, sure, there are a lot of things that have declined that were bad. But what about all the other stuff that was good? And also, not everyone 100 years ago was racist, okay? That's something that's a myth that's presented by people that want you to believe that. So you feel bad. And again, maybe you're not going to buy a product, but you'll buy an ideology from them. Same thing. Although the product maybe is less damaging than the ideology could be. But the thing is, your ancestors, your great-grandparents may have lived a certain way. They got married, and even though they may not have liked each other at times, they loved each other when they died, because they learned how to deal with another human being. And people learned this because also there might be 4 or 5 brothers and sisters in the family. You learned how to deal with other people. Nowadays, we got like one kid being born, and they're spoiled, and mom and dad can't get along with one another. So they're taught by daytime TV, trade her in for someone better. And they show you the movie star who's like, he's 60, but he's got this 20-year-old trophy wife, creating this image to the viewer that that's what he should be doing himself, not pointing out the reality that all this entails. Most of the time when people don't get along with a spouse, when they do break up, they wind up with someone just the same, because we're programmed to look for certain traits and to mate with those traits. Sorry, that's just the way it is. So if a guy's worried about his wife nagging him all the time, chances are he's going to find someone, even though they don't nag him now, they're going to nag him later. Wife is disgusted with how her husband does this or doesn't do that. Marries someone who at first looks like, oh, he's everything different, winds up just the same. Again, we're subconsciously programmed. But in the old days, people recognized this. It was like, okay, well, this is the person I'm with. I'm going to make it work. And if both people were going to try to make it work, they could make it work. And it doesn't mean, oh no, they're going to be unhappy. That's ridiculous. If you do have a brother or sister, you realize that sometimes they can make you miserable, but at other times it's fantastic that you have them. That is what we need to get back to, is people seeing life that way. And maybe we've made the mistake. Maybe we have gone way out on the limb of modernization. And the further we go out, the less of a foundation we have when the wind does blow. And, breaks that branch right off. So maybe your ancestors lived a certain way because it worked. Maybe we live a certain way now because we've been told we should live that certain way. Now, you also have to ask why you believe as you do. I personally think you should explore. Find out what's behind the push for people to, marry later, have fewer kids, desire to live in the city in a little apartment versus living out further away in a bigger house, why we should be this or this or this, I'll do an endorsement here. Just watch a bunch of Dan Curtis BBC documentaries. He's fantastic. He has a lot of good stuff. Century of the Self, fantastic. And he's got some others out there. You watch these things and you're like, whoa, I didn't know it was that way. And then you can go from there. But you should be questioning. The internet makes it possible. But don't go to mainstream media. You'll never get that message. Or at least not very much. And you also have to ask yourself, who benefits? Who benefits from what's going on in modern society today? Is it you? Is it your children? Is it your loved ones? Or is it someone else who gets, these kinds of things going? And ultimately, is it maybe the power elite? I'm not even just talking about your politicians or even the people you see on TV. Often the really super wealthy, influential people you'll never see on TV. I mean, can you imagine some of the wealthy financial families doing something where they had a reality show in their house? Okay, it's not going to happen. It really isn't. They're the ones that control things. Are you benefiting or are they? If you live a certain way, behave a certain way, pattern your life a certain way. You think about that for a moment. And also, does the idea, is our society today, more intelligent than it was 100 years ago? I would speculate, back in the old days, if you could go back in time and go up to some farmer 100 years ago and he's got his tractor there and old diesel tractor, or something out there in the field, and you asked him about some, issue, I'll bet you he could formulate a reply better than if you walk up to some college student now on a college campus and ask them a question. And I'll venture to say that if there was another depression like there was back during the 1930s, that people in the 30s found a way to survive. Whereas these college students, I saw that there was a class, they're doing classes on, and some of the classes teach skills like how to cut an avocado, how to fold a sheet. Oh my gosh, are we to the point where we have to teach college-age students how to get the edible part out of an avocado? Is this the measure of a successful society? Seriously? Maybe we should, really reevaluate where we're at and what would happen if the grid goes down. I think that if the grid went down now in America, I think most of the regions that we call blue states, those urban, either very poor or very rich neighborhoods, on the far east coast and the west coast, I think they would just perish. I think that the areas you see in the country, I think your casualties, if the grid went down in a state like Montana or Utah or, these kinds of regions, would actually be fairly small. But these areas where people just don't even know how to change a tire on a car. Yeah, I don't enjoy changing a tire on a car, but I've done it many times. Now, can I work on an engine of a car? No. But changing a tire is a very simple thing. But a lot of people, now don't know how to do that. Or, if it gets to the point where a person doesn't even know where the water comes from in their toilet, I think it's a very sad time. And so maybe we need to get back down to the basics. Maybe the first thing you do is try to limit that TV set. Now, the internet can be just as bad. But at least there you have more interaction and you can choose versus you see people sit in front of the TV, click, oh, maybe I'll watch that. Click, maybe I'll watch that. Maybe the brain waves are operating on a much greater scale when you're in front of a computer than they are on TV. Personally, I love the fact that I'm seeing that more young people, of the young ones today, teenagers, are thinking of television as being something that old people watch. Now, of course, some of the shows that, they really enjoy, whether they be like Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or something like that, those are out on TV. But they generally watch them on the computer, and so they don't see that connection. Plus, again, they can go through, scroll around, figure out what they're going to watch. And they're not the kind of generation that just sits there and clicks the button while they're staring. And, their brain waves are at almost a sleep state. They're actually in a trance state. I don't think people are so much in a trance state unless they're just scrolling through to see what interesting thing is on, I don't know, Snapchat or Facebook or Pinterest or whatever, and they're just scroll, and that sort of thing. But ultimately, we need to get away from that TV set. Okay? We can argue about the other things later, but the TV, bad news. That's actually a good one. Not just fake news. The TV is bad news. You need to stay away from it. and start getting to more of an organic way of living. And going back and thinking, maybe my great-grandparents had a better life than I did, ultimately. I have more things. They had more happiness. Okay, what counts most? And what were their priorities? Their priority was family. Nowadays, families are like, well, if I get around to it and I make enough money and I do this, that didn't hold back your grandparents. And you're here today because of it. So think about that for a moment. Now, anyway, the thing I want to deal with today is, the corporate media. But I want to do a story first. Imagine, if you will, you're living in your nice, modest house. It's not too big, not too small, just kind of average. And there's this guy that lives in this big, giant mansion up on the hill. Now, the thing is, he makes it known to everybody that he thinks he's better than everyone else in town. All you people that live in the small houses. And his arrogancy goes to a level of, he kind of has control over the economy of your city, the businesses he owns as well. And he also owns all of the means of communication, so to speak. Well, actually, he doesn't own all of them, but he owns the glitzy ones. And you go to the store, and it's his magazines that are all glossy and beautiful and catch your eye along the shelves. And he also owns the books. He owns the publishing, and therefore all the books in the bookstore and all the books in the library are produced by him. And, if you're a writer and you want to have favor with him to get your stuff published, well, you know the deal. You know how to do it. And let's say he owns the TV shows and basically he has control over it all. Now, again, let us emphasize one more time. Not only does he tell you that he's better than you, but all of the media that he puts out celebrates the life of people like him. Not you, but people like him. Only people that are, agree with him in politics, culture, they see the world the same way he does. They're the only things you see, but they're presented as your role models. Even though, even in movies that he produces, people like you are portrayed as stupid and immoral and deficient in so many ways, needing to be controlled. And basically, just your heritage is shown as being evil. Everything is negative. And it's presented in such a way that it really, really is designed to dumb down your kids, so that when they read stuff, they're not going to be at the same level that you were when you were a kid before this guy came along. Now, let's now pretend that you and your neighbors, you don't get angry, but you stand in line for the next edition of the magazines coming out. You stand in line to read the books that he publishes. You go home after a hard day of work and you switch on the news that he ultimately controls. And you watch it religiously. And you watch the programs that come on that make you look stupid. Now, you maybe think to yourself, wait a minute. This could never happen. People wouldn't fall for that. People wouldn't do that. They'd get angry. They'd produce their other things. No, I think that really does describe the way the world is today. It does describe a modern America, and to a large degree Europe, and much of the rest of the developed world. The thing is, you know as well as I do, that the average person, their only means of getting information out is really like, they can write a letter to the editor, or they can, they can set up a blog, and they can do a podcast, they can post on Facebook. But that is very, very important. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But the person has wealth and influence can get attention immediately. In our society, the people that have the money are the ones that pretty much control what is out there, what you're going to be seeing, and ultimately what most people are going to be thinking. And this has got to stop. I hear talk coming out now because of various protests and problems taking place after the election. And some people have speculated that we may actually become so polarized that the country breaks up. Now, they talk about things like some of these people in California talking about creating a ballot measure to urge California to secede from the Union. And, or maybe the West Coast, the far left part of the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California, could maybe join with Canada or something like that. Now, I think it gets much more complex than a regional thing. It gets more complex than when we look at the map and see all of the areas that voted, let's say, Republican, and they're all red. And then you see those urban areas, usually pushed over towards either the Atlantic coast or the Pacific coast, and they're blue. And the thing is, it goes deeper than that, because there's many people that live in places like Los Angeles, the San Francisco area, Portland, Seattle, that are very conservative. And there's people that live in Texas and even Utah that are extremely liberal. So such a breakup, if you're talking about a geographical sense, something that would actually entail the separation of land. This will now be ecotopia or something. That was something from the 60s when people talked about the West Coast becoming its own country. And the other part would be something else. I don't think it would happen that way. And I don't think that's the way really we're seeing this cultural shift. Now, what I'm going to suggest is this. Now, just think. Give this some thought here now. What I'm going to suggest is what we should do is a cultural divorce. That's right. The thing is, we actually do have a lot of people who really know how things operate. And they can be left-wing and right-wing, okay? They can be Bernie supporters, Trump supporters. I don't care. Because I have seen people from both of those camps. And what they have in common is far more than what either of them have in common with people like John McCain or Hillary Clinton. Or the Hollywood elite. Or, think about it. Didn't Hillary say something about the people that were supporting Bernie were like these millennials who were like living at home with their mom or something like that, or their basement. And then, of course, she said the thing about the people, a lot of the people supporting Trump were like deplorable people. Well, the thing is, I would actually encourage the people who don't want to think along the conformist lines, who turn on these Hollywood galas with all of these narcissistic people congratulating each other for being as narcissistic as they possibly can and accomplishing who knows what, because, most of the movies and stuff like that they point to, most people have never even heard of. They go to see other types of shows, of which, a lot of those never get awards. But the thing is, maybe it's time that people finally just say, no more. Tell that guy that lives on the hill, that owns a lot of that media, tell him you're not going to get it anymore. Instead of getting your books from big publishers, okay, when I was trying to find publishers for my books, initially the Freedom from Conscience book series, when I was trying to find publishers, I noticed how most of them were located in pretty much in like New York, the big ones. And the thing is, you'll get small publishers, that'll be out in other areas of the country, but their reach is far more limited. And the thing is that the big publishers, you get a book published by a big publisher, you got a lot of power behind you. And that's what people read. But the thing is, do you think that if you wrote a book, now just think about this, Hal. Let's say you write a book on the advantages of getting married and having a family. And it's this beautiful book that talks about the joys of parenthood, the joys of having kids. Let's say you're writing it about yourself, and who knows, let's say you have 4 kids, which by, urban East Coast standards is like you've got a family is, it's huge, giant, because most people there just have 1 kid, or they have a cat. Now, the thing is, do you think you'd get it published? And now let's ask you this, and this you might want to think about. Let's say it's got a religious bent to it. Do you think most of the big religious publishing houses would publish it? If you've got to hesitate for a minute to think about that, then you already know your answer. Now, I may be wrong. Maybe there would be some out there. But I tend to think that the big publishing houses are going to be giving the people what they think the people are going to want. And that's going to be the kind of the same thing as you're going to see on television. What the big producers in Hollywood think or want you to want. Okay? Now, you may, just to illustrate this, just to bring it down to where you can understand this. And I don't care if you voted for Hillary, you voted for Bernie, you voted for Trump, or you voted for that bald guy that was running in Utah. The thing is, who lost really badly, by the way. The thing is that if you look at the big news organizations, when they were trying to interview people, the big networks, when they were trying to interview people and find out before the election what their views were on things, how many of them did what they used to do back in like the 1970s and go to some place like a fairgrounds, a sporting event, or even, and I don't drink, I actually don't even go to sporting events. I love to exercise and do sports like stuff, but I just don't want to watch. But the thing is, if you think about it, most of the time, the big networks, they interview people at some sort of sushi bar someplace, or some really fancy little cafe, coffee house type thing. And they're going to get a certain type of view. And if you know anything about marketing, you know that people have different wants. People who have, most of those people that go to the really exclusive coffee house type place or the sushi bars, they are going to tend to be more liberal. Now, there are conservatives that do that too, but it's going to be more likely to be liberal. All right? It's like if you went to a heavy metal concert in the 90s. Most of the people there are males. Now, there are women too, but statistically, most of the people there are male. And marketers know that you choose according to certain profiles. You got people that don't have kids, They're going to have money to buy things that people with kids don't have. That's why they're going to advertise in magazines that are aimed at those kind of people, different products. Okay? But that's enough of marketing. It's just to illustrate that your media people who are paid a lot of money just to read off a teleprompter and to show a little bit of emotion here and there, raise their eyebrows a certain way, turn their head a certain way, and so forth, those people make pretty good money, and yet they don't have a real connection to the average person. So why can you trust what they're saying? If the guy on the hill I told you about doesn't like you, do you trust giving books that he loves to your kids about you? Okay, that's kind of dumb. But yet we do it all the time. We set our kids down in front of TV shows that, when we were kids, our parents would have said, there is no way you're watching this show. And I'm not talking about necessarily the violent stuff, because there was violent shows back in, let's say, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Very violent things. But I'm talking about just the content, that little subtle political or social content that comes through that is not really favorable to tradition. And you can see this bias even in children's movies and children's TV. Oh my gosh, you can really see it in children's TV. And so we need to start breaking away. People need to start trying to find books from sources that are not from the big publishing houses. We need to go smaller. When it comes to our television, we need to be far more selective. Forget the ratings that you see. Because sometimes you'll see something that's, this is good for all ages. And the message is horrible. Whereas you might have something else where, some zombie show or something, and it says, no one under this age should watch it, but yet they portray actually pretty positive values. Start buying more local. Start looking to become more authentic, to break away from the society. Gandhi did it. Gandhi, he didn't go out there and start burning things down. He just urged people from India to stop buying things the British were selling. That really did the trick. And that's what we need to do. You're the Gandhis out there. The empire, the British Empire, is that empire of businesses and media and publishing and all these kinds of things located mostly in New York and Los Angeles. Okay? That's the British Empire, so to speak, that is filtering through a message to the people. You got to break that. Okay? So I think one that really requires is not me or anyone else sitting here saying, here's what you need to buy, here's what you don't need to buy, here's what you need to buy, here's what you should avoid. No, it is getting a mindset that you want to become more authentic. Okay? The whole think globally, act locally. Act it with your dollars. Act it with your attention. Make your family more what's that phrase? Be in the world but not of the world. Strive for that. Make sure that this is the direction you're taking. And when you do that, and when your neighbors do it, and when you get your fellow people, if you go to church, get church members to think this way. Share information such as this. I don't care. Share this video. But share it so more and more people finally take that crucial step. Instead of seeing people post things from media on Facebook to make their points, make your own blogs even, and then post it there. It's kind of silly to be saying, these guys are terrible, and then if you click on these links, you're making them money. We got to pull away from the system. Okay? We need to break away from it. I don't think we need to have a civil war, and I certainly don't think America's going to break up yet, although I think there's a possibility in the future. But at this present time, let's focus on culture. And, let's try to make a difference there. All right, well, that's the end of our time here. We have that time constraint. So I encourage you to...
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.